now we will turn to the other objects within our own solar system with Sara Russell from the Natural History Museum, which will be talking about water. Water everywhere. Is anyone around to drink it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you to the organisers of this conference and the other speakers of the conference. I've had a great time. I've learnt loads so far. Let me just move on. Now, I realise my title is perhaps slightly cryptic, and I am going to talk about water is sort of obsessing me at the moment, but basically what I'm going to talk about is the OSIRIS-REx New Horizons mission to asteroid Bennu and back, and what that can tell us about prebiotic chemistry. So this was an expedition to an asteroid, but we already have samples of asteroids on Earth in the form of meteorites. So most meteorites originate from asteroids. They look something like this, and meteorites kind of are a time machine. They tell us what the solar system was like 4.5 billion years ago. So here's a beautiful image of a modern protoplanetary disk, so a planetary system forming. And it has a young star in the center. And then these orange rings are rings of dusty material. And there are gaps in the rings where we think that planets might be forming and accreting all of this dusty material. And we can see these processes happening in our own solar system, looking at meteorites like this, which are made of, you can see all of these little blobs, rounded things and irregular shaped things. These were once these dust particles that were free floating around our solar system. So they can give us clues as to its temperature, pressure, environment, architecture, and that sort of thing. So meteorites are fantastic. And I just wanted to quickly mention my very favorite meteorite, which fell just an hour's drive from here in 2021, which is the Winchcombe meteorite. So this splattered onto somebody's driveway, this guy's driveway, that's Rob Wilcox's house it was, in the middle of a UK lockdown. And it's exciting for a couple of reasons. It was the first meteorite fall in the UK for 30 years. So it was a real kind of once in a generation experience. And it was also the UK's only carbonaceous chondrite. So carbonaceous chondrites are a very special and rare type of meteorite that contain organic carbon and water. And so these are the most special ones that can tell us about potentially about the ingredients for life and how it might have been delivered to Earth. So meteorites like this are fantastic, but there are a couple of problems with studying meteorites. The first one is you don't get to pick where it came from, and you don't have any context. You don't know very much about the parent body that it originally came from. And the other thing is that as soon as a meteorite comes through the Earth's atmosphere, it starts to become contaminated. It interacts with the Earth's air, and also when it lands on the ground, bugs start crawling in it, and it becomes organically contaminated as well. So to solve those two problems, we have to go into space. So there have been 3 asteroid sample return missions that have visited an asteroid and brought material back to Earth for us to study. The first 2 I don't have time to go into very much, but these are Japanese missions, Hayabusa and Hayabusa 2. I'm going to focus on the NASA mission OSIRIS-REx, which went to asteroid Bennu. But just to say, this is what's called an S-type asteroid, a stony asteroid that is not rich in organic material. But both Ryugu and Bennu, they look spectrally different to each other, but they are both C-type asteroids, and C stands for carbon. So we're expecting both of these to contain carbon. Okay. All right, launched in September 26, so nearly 10 years ago now. This is what the spacecraft looks like. It has a series of instruments for characterizing the asteroid, solar panels. The points I wanted to point out is this arm here is called the TAG-SAM, which stands for Touch and Go Sampler. And this is the bit that actually collected the sample. The sample ended up in here. And this is the sample return capsule. So this little arm touched the surface just for a few seconds and put the sample in the capsule there. And this is the target. Went to visit asteroid Bennu, which is about 500 meters across. One thing that surprised us when we arrived there is that it's a rubble pile asteroid. So it's just a very loose accretion of boulders and rocks, just touching each other, holding on through their own gravity. And that made the sampling slightly unexpected, because the sampling arm basically went straight through the surface. It's incredibly porous. Still, all worked out fine. This is a picture taken by the spacecraft when it came back to the top of the Earth's atmosphere, dropping the capsule off. So the spacecraft is still working fine, still has all its instruments, and it's tootled off now to look at other asteroids. It's now called Asteroid Apex. Whereas the sample return capsule came safely down to Earth in the Utah desert. Yes, I love this, very calming. As soon as we saw the parachute come out, everybody breathed a big sigh of relief. Okay, that's it on the ground. And then it was taken within 24 hours to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where the sample return capsule was opened up like a clam, and the tag SAM was taken out. So you see it's only like this big. And this is the tag SAM once it's opened up. And the return sample was in the form of kind of centimeter-sized pebbles and sandy-sized and smaller material, very, very dark. A total of 121 grams was brought back, which makes it the biggest NASA sample return since Apollo. So this is like a really big deal for us, and absolutely loads and loads of material for us all to work on. And a little bit of that found its way to us at the Natural History Museum in London. So this was our first sample from Bennu. It was, a bit less than a teaspoonful. It's 100 milligrams of material. And you can see it's in the form of kind of black, sandy material. You might be able to see it has little spots of white stuff, which I will talk about later. And what we have been doing ever since we got it came back to Earth in September 2023, and we've been picking through our sample grain by grain. Each grain we CT scan, and then we put it in the electron microscope, and then we can do further work as well. So here's an example of one of those tiny little sandy grains. So this one's about, sorry, that scale is wrong. That should be 0.1 millimeters. So the whole thing is about a millimeter across. And this is an element map made by a technique called EDX, where iron is green, magnesium is red, and calcium is blue. And so all of the minerals show up as different colors. And there's a legend here. So the phyllosilicate clay makes up most of the rock. There's all of the brick red stuff you can see. More than 80% of the rock is clay. And the rest of it is carbonate in purple, magnetite and sulfides, and little olivines. So those first three ones all formed by the action of water. So we think that Bennu originally formed, its parent body formed with dust grains from the protoplanetary disk and also ice, maybe 50% ice and 50% water. And then it heated up due to radioactive isotopes like aluminium-26, and the ice melted and reacted with the primary minerals to form this array here. So it's telling us there's huge amounts of water involved in its formation, except for the olivine. The olivine is a primordial grain, so these can tell us a little clues about the composition of the protoplanetary disk in the region where Bennu's parent body formed. So the mineralogy looks slightly familiar to us who study meteorites. It looks similar to some carbonaceous chondrites, especially a very rare group called the CI chondrites, and also similar to Rugu. And this made us think that maybe, although the CI chondrites are rare on Earth, maybe this sort of asteroid is actually common in space, because of the three asteroid sample returns that have been done so far, two of them look very, very similar to each other. And the CI chondrites, although they're rare, they're very, very fragile. And so most CI chondrites, when they hit the atmosphere, will simply break up and won't make it to the ground. So our meteorite collection is extremely biased. Okay, just a few nice images of the minerals inside them. This is magnetite. So magnetite is a real kind of smoking gun for the action of water. It forms when water interacts with iron metal. And the next one is sulfide. So these beautiful hexagonal laths are iron sulfide, which again form through the interaction of water and very tiny distributed sulfur. So we also find carbon in there. So the carbon doesn't look so pretty, but this black thing there is a little fleck of carbon. And overall, most of the carbon is actually finely distributed through the rock, so it's hard to image. Overall, there's huge amounts of carbon, 4.5%. This makes it one of the most carbon-rich astromaterials that have been studied. It's more carbon-rich than Rugu. It also contains more nitrogen than Rugu, and it contains huge amounts of huge amounts of nitrogen, huge amounts of hydrogen as well. So this value is by weight, so the amount of atoms is obviously even more. One surprise we found is that all the little white spots that we see are phosphates. They're sodium magnesium phosphate. So this is a different color scheme, but just to show up the phosphate. This was a surprise because we don't see this in meteorites, and it might be a phase that is just very, very delicate and easily breaks down on interaction with the atmosphere. But there's loads of it in Bennu, and of course phosphate is really important as in biology and also as a catalyst for organic reactions. And we also found little bits of other salts. So we found sodium chloride, which is shown here in purple, so that's table salt. We also found potassium chloride shown here in sort of lime green. So there's a whole series of different salt minerals that we find in Bennu. And again, we don't find these in meteorites because these are incredibly soluble phases that dissolve away just in the humidity of the air. So we managed to bag the cover of Nature with our salts discovery. And this image here shows another salt. This is sodium carbonate needles, which are in a mineral form called trona. Overall, the minerals that we found, these salty minerals, reminded us of those that we find in evaporated lake beds. And the place we compared our minerals to was Souls Lake in California, where there's been an awful lot of published work done because it's an economically mined area. And from that, we were able to work out what sequence of how the salts were deposited and how the fluid evolved in composition over time. What we find was that, these salts are very similar to those seen on evaporites on Earth. So evaporite is a rock that formed from the evaporation of water. And it formed from the evaporation of briny water. And we concluded that Bennu must once have contained pods of tepid liquid brine. So again, this is not what we were expecting. So in meteorites, we knew that they'd been affected by water, but we thought it was just kind of a tiny little grain of ice would melt and would change the rock immediately around it. But that's not what happened on Bennu. On Bennu, there were actual pods of liquid water underground. We have various mineral thermometers that tell us that it was about 25 degrees, so it's quite warm and very, very salty. And that sort of environment, this kind of liquid brine, is also a great place to make organic molecules. So while me and my colleagues were looking at the minerals, we have an organics team who are busy looking at the organic components in Bennu. And the way they do this, so that this was led out of NASA Goddard by Danny Glavin and Jason Dworkin. And the way they work on this is they make what they call an asteroid tea, where they put a bit of the asteroid into hot water. The hot water then turns this sort of sludgy brown color, and they analyze the liquid that it's produced. And within this liquid, they found this massive array of organic molecules, including, but not exclusively, literally thousands of organic molecules, including all of the 5 nucleotide bases that are found in in biology on Earth. So the 4 that are found in DNA, plus uracil found in RNA. They found 14 out of 20 of the amino acids that are used in life. I think since this work was published, they found a 15th one now. And another discovery that they made during the course of their work by mass spectrometry was the presence of ammonia. So here are the main peaks that they find in their tea. So there's sodium and potassium, which go in there because they are easily dissolved in water, so they go in from the rock. They found formaldehyde in high abundance, very simple organic molecule. The H2S is just from the sulfide dissolution. But the ammonia is particularly of interest because that gives us a clue as to where Bennu formed. So, sorry, this is my own very simple cartoon. But the idea is there was a massive temperature gradient in the early solar system. Around the area where the Earth formed, water would have stayed as a vapor, so there was no condensation of water on the Earth when it first formed. Water only started to condense further out around the region of the giant planets. And you have to go even further out, maybe towards Neptune, to start to condense the ammonia that we see in Bennu. So it's a real clue that Bennu's parent body formed right in the outermost part of the solar system. So then it must have been transported to where we see it today, which is in a near-Earth orbit. And part of that transport may have been due to the giant planet migration in the early solar system, which would have disrupted the smaller bodies. Okay, so here is a kind of summary of our big idea about Bennu. So we started off with precursor molecules, including ammonia, formaldehyde, and water. And these accreted with the rocky part of Bennu to produce the suite of salt and clay minerals. So the trona, that's the sodium carbonate, the magnesium sodium phosphate, sodium chloride, and saponite, which is one of the clays that we find. And then the salty brine pods could have helped produce these more complicated organics, including the nucleobases and the amino acids. And what we think is that these briny environments may be widespread throughout the solar system. So Enceladus, for example, sprays out this briny fluid. We see evidence of evaporated lakes on asteroid Ceres. So it could be that environments like this were actually widespread in the solar system, and therefore these complex organic molecules may have formed in many different environments as well. Okay, so sort of overall message is that Bennu contains all of the building blocks of life. It contains loads of water. It contains all of the elements that you need to produce life. So it contains this kind of fertilizing elements, and it contains loads of organics, as well as the phosphates, which make up the backbone of DNA. So one of the kind of questions I have maybe, is that, so it has all of these things, but why did life not start on Bennu then? Maybe we don't see any evidence that for any actual biomarkers on Bennu. Is that because there was not enough energy, not enough time, too much radiation? I think it's sort of relevant for when we think about the icy moons as well, because Bennu's parent body would have been quite similar to those kind of bodies, but only for a very short amount of time. Okay. The final quick point that I'll make is that the organics are racemic. So this is also in this fantastic organics paper that came out in January this year. So this was a surprise because this is biological materials preferentially use the L enantiomer for amino acids. And in meteorites, we see this L enantiometric excess. And so there was an idea that these excesses were due to some asteroid or cosmic or physical process that happened in space before things got to Earth. But that seems to be not the case. So now we think maybe this is just all contamination. And if there's no biological processes, then perhaps all organics are racemic. Okay, so these are my discussion points and conclusions. So the Bennu asteroid contains water, carbon, phosphate, and other salts. And its mineralogy is really dominated by the action of water. You see that all over. And that implies that it accreted with loads of ices. So we think about 50% ice. Its parent body contains pods of actual briny liquid water. And that would have been a brilliant place to cook up new organic molecules that would be of interest for prebiotic reasons. It's a very common asteroid type. So what we imagine is that asteroids like Bennu would have been all around the early solar system and would have seeded the Earth with all of these lovely ingredients for life, but also Mars and the other planets and moons as well. So in my view, life elsewhere is likely to be as we know it. And especially on the right here is the abundance of the elements. So obviously water is incredibly abundant across our galaxy, and so are organics made of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. So it seems to make sense that life would use those components preferentially. But maybe life looks different in subtle ways. Maybe they can use different enantiomers, or maybe have different chemical pathways to produce the cells that they form. And then finally, we find no evidence of life on Bennu. So the question is, why not? And are there other places we can explore where we might find that life? Thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. Oh, oh yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yeah, sorry. To say at the very end, sorry, I don't know if you can go back to my talk and show the slide after the conclusion slide. We have a new exhibit that's opening in London at the Natural History Museum that's very relevant to this conference, called Space, Could Life Exist Beyond Earth? We're going to be talking about the habitability of Mars. We'll talk about loads about asteroids and about icy moons and about exoplanets. It's aimed at families, so it should be quite fun. So go and have a look if you can.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. There are only a handful of results I can think of that really have changed the way that I look at the universe. And one of them is finding liquid water in such a body. It's so wild to me. And it looks like such a great analog environment for looking at prebiotic chemistry in the lab, actually.
Yes.
And also, I'll just mention to the audience, if you happen to be around, London is not terribly far away from Oxford. So if you did find the time to visit the Natural History Museum, I'd certainly encourage doing so.